My name's Jo. I'm an anti-racism and an equality and diversity expert. I'm also the CEO and founder of Untitled Voice, which is an anti-racism consultancy. So that essentially means that I provide high energy, unique educational training pieces for the workforce. I've got 20 years corporate background, so I'm going in to businesses up to C-suite, and mainly at C-suite board level, educating leadership teams on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You'll probably hear me say DE&I, and that's what that acronym is. So yes, I mean, I'm really, it's about progressing the agenda. It's about, really driving fundamental change, which I think is the nuance in the conversation, because we've had loads of years of diversity training and nothing's really changed. So it's really, for me, about driving that for a modern and progressive working environment. I'm also a writer, Black culture writer, and I work for a social media platform called Millennial Femme, and it's all about empowering Black women, because we know that Black women are statistically disproportionately affected by racism in the workplace. And I'm also a mentor, so I mentor organisations who are, again, authentically on their journey to embed DE&I into their business. And for individuals who are trying to navigate the sort of systemic barriers and trying to progress their careers. I'm unapologetically passionate about it for two reasons. The very obvious one, I'm a Black woman, but I'm also a Black woman who's reached the glass ceiling in terms of intersectionality. So I really know what it means to have a psychologically safe working environment and a progressive working environment. But secondly, and most importantly, in light of global events, and I am talking about the very public murder of George Floyd in 2020, I really think there's been a global awareness that we don't have equity, and we don't have equity in the workforce. So there's a real sort of, I've witnessed a real sea change in attitudes where businesses, corporations have recognised that they have an individual and a collective responsibility to really shift the dial and actually make some of those practical, tangible changes, which is why we're here today, because we're talking about digital inclusion, and that goes hand in hand with social inclusion. And it's really about, how do we develop the narrative, how do we increase representation, and how do we ensure that Black and ethnically diverse voices are authentically being heard? So yeah, I've got some key points and principles in the training that I've been doing. This is how I frame the conversation. So it is an uncomfortable conversation, particularly if you're a leadership team, because you're sort of role modeling the tone and the cultures and the conversation you want your workforce to have. And you have to challenge your biases, and you have to challenge your preconceptions. So it is about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Lots of organisations are on a journey, but it's not the same journey. So I always say we need a strategic approach. It's not a one size fits all. So you have to really do like an individual needs assessment of where you are in your business, and what you need to improve. And also, I think it's really important that, this isn't a quick fix. We're dealing with years and years of systemic racism manifesting in the workplace. So there are no quick tick boxes, quick fixes. This is like a really long journey. It's a lifelong journey, and we're all continually learning, including myself as the expert. I'm learning every single day. So it is a journey. And I think that, that it is crucial that we recognise that. And finally, it's really important that the onus is not put on people who are being discriminated against in the workplace to actually dismantle the systemic racism. So the onus is not on Black and ethnically diverse individuals to make those changes. It is a top-down approach. And I just wanted to frame the conversation before I hand over to Fabio about why we're having this conversation. No one really wants to have racial disparity. But I've got some stats on the screen that really sort of show why there's a strong business case for having conversations like this. It's crucial to have safe spaces where you can have these conversations. But yeah, the top one just blows my mind. It's if we go on the current trajectory, it's going to take 95 years for Black employees to reach talent parity. across the private sector, and that's because we're not given the opportunities or the promotions or the access to to training, etc., etc. So there's a real need for, again, that fundamental change. Like, what are the practical things that we're going to do? Again, this is why we have this workshop. We're going to give you some practical takeaways of how you can help your business, increase your voice, amp up your voice. See what I did there? And yeah, there was a couple more stats there, but there is a suggestion that we're currently backsliding. So no black executives in the top 100 FTSE companies in the UK. So it's incredibly important. And although, on my final bit, it's just although we are talking about digital inclusion today. Like I said, it does go hand in hand with social inclusion. And then here is just some tips of how, if you're looking at your business and doing that sort of needs assessment, individual needs assessment, what are some of the positive actions that you can take to make sure that you're being inclusive in the work environment. So really diversifying your recruitment panels, looking at your senior leadership team, is it representative? If you don't see people that look like you in senior leadership roles, it's very, very damning.
Yeah.
And it's just about your recruitment and your retention, and really promoting your black and ethnically diverse staff. And if you're thinking industry wide, it's about how you actually create leadership programs. ASOS came out on LinkedIn this year, I think it was, to say, we're going to own this. We don't have enough black women. We don't have enough black women in leadership. So they've created a leadership program specifically for ethnically diverse women. So it's things like that, how you can reach out and make those sort of tangible changes. And then the mentoring, and the reverse mentoring is if you can walk in the shoes of marginalized groups and individuals, that will really give you some insight into what they're dealing with and what the case is. So I think that's enough from me. But just to say, I'm really excited about our collaboration as well. We're on the same page about, really increasing diverse voices. And so I'm going to hand over to Fabio.
Absolutely.
To tell us about SEO.
Thank you very much, John. Now I almost feel like I should be talking about the impact SEO has in the community rather than talk about the tech first, but so now certainly we will certainly be talking about what SEO is now and how you can use it to increase the traffic on your website. So going through the agenda very quickly, we'll talk about, so as I was saying, what SEO is, how it works, how a practice like SEO can certainly help underrepresented communities. We'll go over a few case studies that we've prepared. And then finally, of course, the floor will be all yours and you'll be able to ask us any questions you like. Okay. I think, Noemi, there's someone trying to get in. Yeah, there you go. So whether you have an e-commerce site or a site where you promote your services, you must have wondered, how can I increase the traffic to my website? And as soon as you Google it or ask someone with experience, the answer that you normally get is, oh, just improve your SEO on your site. But what does that actually mean? So SEO stands for search engine optimization, or essentially just how easy it is for Google to find your website. And there are certainly several different search engines out there. So you have search engines like Bing, Yahoo, Baidu in China, or Yandex in Russia. However, 90% of searches are done on Google. So that's usually what we're talking about when we say search engines. And basically, search engines just go out and crawl the web to find pages and index them in their catalog. Indexing is very similar to when you have a book, and at the end of the book, you have an index where it tells you where everything was talked about and the location. That's pretty much Google and their indexing system, really, on the web and in the cloud. So let's take a quick look at an example. Yes. Okay, so now this is a typical search page with the results. Okay, you can see that these are ads on the screen right now. This essentially is a practice similar to SEO called PPC, or pay-per-click. And as the name suggests, you essentially pay to rank right at the top. and every time someone clicks on your link, you essentially pay Google for it. Okay. Now, the second image is what's known as a knowledge graph. And what it's doing is it's pulling in a result that might be farther down on the page, but since Google thinks it's answering the query really well, it will get shown up here as well as farther down on the page too. Like you may have seen things like this farther down the page too. Okay. And then finally, you have the organic results. Now, typically there are about 10 organic results on one page. And organic listings simply mean that these results aren't paid at all, unlike PPC. They show up on Google because they've done a good job of telling Google that this page is about this particular query. Then you also have a people also ask area, and this simply shows the related searches that people will do on this topic. Now, fewer than 10% of people will actually ever click on the next page. If they don't find what they're looking for on the very first page, they'll simply adjust their search criteria. And that's why Google added in this people also ask area. And this is the biggest why SEO is so important for your website. These top 3 organic results that you can see here on the third image essentially get over 70% of all the clicks. The first position usually gets about 35 to 40% of the clicks. The second will then get between 15 and 20. And then the third position will get around 10% of the clicks. Okay. So that's why it's so important to make sure that your website is first on Google. But how does Google actually determine what should go on the first page? Well, let me tell you that the biggest factor is actually relevancy. You essentially want to make sure that your website is exactly what the searcher is looking for when they're searching Google. Now, Google uses over 200 factors to determine what's relevant in their algorithms. And there's absolutely no way that we are going to be able to cover all of them today. But if we concentrate on a few of them, we have a fighting chance to get seen in the search results. In addition to relevance, you also want to make sure that your site is useful. All that means is that when a user clicks on your site, the information that they're looking for is easily found. Think about the last time you did a search. If you went to a page that you thought you had the answer for what you were looking for, but you had a hard time finding it, did you stick around? Like you don't have your mics on right now, but probably not, right? Because essentially most people would just click back and go look for a different answer. So make sure that your site is also useful and that you've arranged the answers for the topic in a meaningful way, that's easier for readers to find what they're actually looking for. Now, there are 2 main ways that you can work on SEO on your website, and they're called on-page SEO and off-page SEO. On-page SEO is simply telling Google and the reader that you have everything that they're looking for. You have all the indicators that they're looking for, and really this just means that you have all the right keywords on your site. Now, on-page SEO is easier to deal with because most of the changes that you would need are within your control. For instance, if your site is about, let's say, barbecues, then you want to make sure that your site has the right keywords in the title, in the body, and in the image descriptions. It also means that you have supporting keywords. And so think about it like the type of keywords you'd want to have are barbecue recipes, grill temperatures, types of meat, best barbecue grills, and everything that is essentially related to the topic. The best thing about it is that if you already have a website right now with some articles on it, then you may actually just be a few tweaks away from seeing massive results with your traffic. And that, by the way, is without writing any new content. So if you do want to see about that, make sure you just drop us a message after this workshop or even now, and we can certainly analyze your site later on. Now, with off-page SEO, that simply means that you're making sure that other websites are linking back to you. This practice is called backlinks. Now, normally it's quite hard to explain backlinks, but I've come up with an example that I normally use with a lot of our clients and a lot of my friends, or even my mom when she's asked me about it. I want you to think of backlinks as almost as Twitter mentions. Okay, so if you have a brand and somehow you get someone like Maya Jama or maybe Kylie Jenner tweeting about your brand, you know that will have a huge impact on your brand, right? However, if I was to tweet about your brand with my 150 followers or so, you know for a fact that you wouldn't get as much traction as if someone with a bigger sort of following online would, right? So the same thing happens with websites. Okay, so off-page SEO is essentially a little bit more out of your control because you are relying on other people to believe that your site is worthy of a link. But if you're writing great content and essentially networking with your industry or your topic area, then it really shouldn't be a problem at all. It certainly isn't as hard as getting someone like Maya Jama to tweet about your brand. Okay. Now, I just want to let you know something. As we go through this SEO process, please just keep in mind and realize that search engine optimization does take time. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating when you're not seeing the results fast. Trust me, like I've been there, okay? But if done properly, the results can actually, the results of your SEO efforts can actually last months or even years, very much depending on the industry that you're in. So now that you know a little bit more about what SEO is and how it can improve the traffic on your site, let's talk about how this marketing practice can help support the commercial growth of Black and POC-owned businesses.
Great, thanks, Fabio. So I'm sure at the moment this might feel like a lot of information, but again, please don't worry, as we will be sending you an email with some key takeaways from this workshop. And of course, you're welcome to reach out at any point to info@Viaduct with any SEO related questions. We'll leave all of the contact details at the end. So as Fabio has mentioned, he's now mentioned a few of these concepts. Let's talk about what this really means for underrepresented communities and how it can really help uplift these same communities.
So essentially, after some research and working in the industry for a long time, I can tell you that SEO impacts visibility and is certainly a company's bottom line. Okay. Here at Viaduct Generation, everything we're trying to do is help underrepresented founders develop their online presence, and as a result, develop their economic prosperity as well. With over 93% of online experiences beginning with a search engine, the practice of SEO certainly isn't going anywhere, and it's as relevant as ever. If you think about it, when the pandemic hit, everything turned digital overnight. No matter your business, your customers were looking for you online. If you weren't at the top of the search results, they certainly took their business elsewhere. So what does that mean for underrepresented founders? Well, as you can see from the stat on the screen, Black businesses, for example, have not been afforded the luxury of SEO and are forfeiting online visibility, market share, and commercial growth. You have to think that the practice of SEO has essentially been used by privileged businesses in the West for the past 20 years. Some communities have certainly been benefiting from this for a long time. And what we are essentially trying to do is ensuring that there's more of a level playing field for everyone. Because at the end of the day, the online real estate has more than enough room for all of us.
So I'm just going to interrupt here because, Johanne, I'd love to get your take, as these statistics are really quite shocking, especially when we consider that at least 5% of the UK's privately owned businesses are owned by ethnic minorities. So there's clearly a gap here that needs to be filled to allow us to kind of catch up with traditionally white-owned businesses. So what are your thoughts on this stat and potentially how we can help improve the statistic?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have the stats, and like I had my stats slide earlier, just to really demonstrate what we are actually dealing with and what is the current position. And this conversation is really about elevating Black voices and Black businesses in practical terms. So when I talk about like fundamental change, I'm talking about like what are we actually doing in terms of what's tangible, how can we make those changes, which is why SEO is really important, because it's one of the key ways we're going to amplify those voices. And it's why Amp Up Your Voice really works in corporates, because it is, as a Fabio, economics underpins everything. Absolutely. And until we start earning and are in those senior leadership teams and earning equal to our peers, then we don't have equity. So for me, it's the gold standard. It's like stats like this just prove how far we have to go, and why we need to have all these conversations, and why we need advocates and allies actually in business as well to amplify our voices.
Great, thanks, Johanne. It's definitely some food for thought, and hopefully we're going to be able to give you some practical tips so that we can start closing that gap.
When you start looking at my website, yeah.
We're gonna get there. So yeah, so this is kind of the second half of the workshop where we're kind of seeing these SEO strategies in practice, so a bit more practical. Hopefully you might be able to relate to some of the situations or the cases that we share with you. And then I am really also excited to kind of showcase how we would kind of maybe typically approach a client at the beginning in terms of what we would suggest, what we think should be implemented, etc. And we'll kind of give you a live demo of that with Johanne's page. So Fabio, I'm going to hand it over back to you for these case studies.
Sounds good. So the first case study I actually wanted to speak to you about is someone called Legion of Vapors. They are one of our best clients, and even the owner now, after quite a few months of us working together, I do like to call him a friend. They came to us with quite a lot of serious issues at the beginning. Okay, so something that we haven't mentioned today is that we don't only work as an agency, we also work as a consultancy. Okay, so we can be your agency and take care of all the SEO work for you, or if you already have a team internally, we can just be your consultants, whereby we give them an SEO strategy and then they just go off and implement it. So a couple of the examples you'll see today are agency case studies, like the one that we're about to look at with Legion of Vapors, and then the last one is actually a consultancy case study. Okay, so yes, Noemi, please show the graph. So as you can see, when Legion of Vapors joined us back in April, on average every month they had about 3,344 people going to their site. Now, as of yesterday, when I was completing these case studies, they had on average 17,688 people going to their site. I do have to say, with quick parentheses, at the start of the month it was about 21,000, but we've had to do some huge changes to the theme of the site and had to take down the site for about 3 days, which is why Google then, when it comes to the traffic, they had to reduce it. However, 17,000 in 5 months is a huge difference, and it has certainly had a huge difference into his revenue. His revenue has actually improved by 90% since he started working with us. Okay, it certainly is one of our best clients. We take care of his content, so we write tons of content for him on a daily basis. We take care of his site from a technical perspective. As a matter of fact, my technical team is actually in the call right now, and they must be smiling. But we take care of them from a technical perspective, as well as we handle their hosting server as well. Okay, so when it comes to Legion of Vapors, it certainly is one of them clients that you realize that the more involved the agency is, normally the better results you normally get. Now, Noemi, let's go to the next one. Fortnite STW items. Now, some of you may find it funny because obviously everyone knows what Fortnite is. Huge game. Certainly a client I never expected to have, simply because I was completely unaware that there was items being sold online from Fortnite. I thought everything was just in game. But when we started speaking to Fortnite. They actually, to Fortnite STW items, they actually had a lot of trouble. They had only about 100 people going to their site on a monthly basis. It certainly was tough times. There were tough times with them. Okay. However, as you're about to see in the graph below, after yes, so they started with us in March. They had about, as I was saying, 165 people going to their site. And same thing as of yesterday, they have on average 3,651 people going to their site on a monthly basis. Now, that's a lot of kids using their parents' credit cards, okay? I am glad my boy is only 4 years old because, you know, my credit card is certainly not able to afford all of that money. But at the same time, the Fortnite STW items are super happy with the work that we've been doing, going from on average 100 people going to their site to now thousands of people going to their site on a monthly basis. It has certainly had a direct impact in the company's revenue. Now, let's stay here for a second. As you can see in the graphs go up and down all the time in SEO. Okay, it's impossible, and I guarantee this, impossible for a graph to just have a continuous daily upwards trend. Okay, there's always going to be ups and downs. All right, but we do have to say that with good work, what you're doing is ensuring that even when you get those drops, you don't drop too far down, because as you can see, they've actually never gone back down to the position that they were when they joined us. All right, so yes, they may have slower weeks than others, but hey, this is business, right? That happens in every single business, in every single sector. Next one, Noemi. Now let's talk about Desres. Now, this is certainly one of my favorite clients. Again, someone that is also in the call. And I'm not saying this because they're here, but they're certainly one of my favorite clients. They're super, super, super hardworking. Now, this is the client I was telling you guys about at the start. That is a consultancy. Okay, so we are only their consultants. Desres is actually an estate agent software. And they certainly have had a troubled time. Think about it. We just come from one of the biggest pandemics that have hit us. We were at home for Lord knows how long now. I don't even know how many lockdowns we had anymore. But as most of us know, the housing market was certainly hit badly during the pandemic. Now, Desres, when they came to us, maybe let's look at the graph. Desres, when they came to us, they had on average 938 people going to their site. They have, honestly, two of the most hardworking people I have ever met. They take care of the whole marketing department in the company. So think about the whole marketing department. I'm not only talking about SEO, I'm talking about every single different practice of marketing is taken care of by two people. These two people just used us as their consultants, and everything we've told them from the very beginning, they followed it in an incredible manner. And that's obviously translated in results. They've gone from an average of 938 people going to their site to now 2,164 people on average. Now, think about that for a second, because estate agency software is actually quite a niche industry. All right, it's even more of a niche than the Fortnite product that we were talking about just a second ago. So it is very important for you to notice how much it can actually, how much good practice and good SEO can influence your business. Now, again, I can guarantee you that they're certainly very happy people, and I'm sure that if they could, they would certainly have a few words now. But they are certainly one of my favorite clients because we have an incredibly good working relationship.
Fabio, I just want to pick up on this element of talking about kind of the difference between consultancy and agency. Yep. And you mentioned, obviously, this is quite a small marketing team. There's only two people kind of really implementing the strategies that we're recommending. And I think it's worth actually going a bit further into actually the roles that are necessary when it comes to SEO, because maybe for some people, they might just think, oh, my marketing team is fine, even if they're generalists, or do I need tech? Because at one point we're talking about technical SEO. So what types of roles are involved with implementing an SEO strategy?
That's a very good question. So essentially, there are 4 very important metrics when it comes to SEO. Okay, first of all, and it's something that actually Google just released as an update called Core Web Vitals back in the summer. It's all about user experience. So when it comes to user experience, you can probably guess it. UX, like how the performance of the site, how quick it is, how quickly it becomes interactive. So user experience, super important. And for that, certainly your web developers need to be doing a really good job. Okay, so certainly get onto them if they haven't spoken to you about Core Web Vitals. Okay, then technical SEO. Now from technical SEO, I'm more talking about fixing broken links within your site, ensuring that you don't have any 404 error pages on your site, ensuring that every single page of yours has a meta title and a meta description so that the Google crawler bot knows exactly what that page is about, because the Google crawlers actually read the code of every site. And for the code, I'm talking about, for this example, the metas on every website is very important. Okay, so it's very important for you to have your meta titles and your meta descriptions done correctly. And ensuring that you don't have too many links pointing to redirect pages if they're not completely necessary. Okay, and then of course the 4th and really important one too is the content team. All right, so I like to say this example quite a lot. With SEO, you need to get your house in order before you invite people in. Remember when we were all kids and our parents had people coming over and they were like, oh, go clean your bedroom, even though they weren't going to go and look at your bedroom. Well, it's the same thing with SEO, really. Like, you don't really want anyone to come to your site if you don't have a good technical background, because otherwise it's not the user experience is not going to be really great. Okay, so you need to ensure that your technical side of SEO, your house, is in order before you invite people in through content. Now, content, of course, is super important, ensuring that you are tackling all those keywords as we were talking about a second ago, as well as then ensuring that the content is of the highest quality so that you can essentially get those backlinks. Okay, does that answer your question, Amy?
Yes, I believe it does. Obviously, if anyone has kind of any follow-up questions from what Fabio has just mentioned, feel free to either pop them in the chat, but there is also a Q&A function in the little activities tab, which is basically like a triangle, a square, and a circle. If you click into that, you should also be able to ask a question directly to me. Otherwise, so we're now going to move on to quite an exciting part, which is Johanne's website. So I am going to start sharing my screen with her website. Okay, great. So part of the reason why I've been really looking forward to this part of the workshop is because I can imagine that probably quite a few of you that are joining us today are going to be in a similar place as Johanne when it comes to SEO. And so we really want to show you potentially what you can do now immediately, and then kind of what it would mean if you were to be able to implement a more longer term strategy. Johanne, I'm going to kickstart off directly with you, because I want to ask you kind of what were your initial objectives or kind of thought process when it came to setting up your website?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought, everyone has a website. I need a website. That was my initial thought. I thought that actually it'll be quite an easy way to generate traffic and generate sales. And that, if I had a really good website there and that I disseminated that to my groups, that would be a really easy win. But actually, as it turns out, that's not the case, as we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so given kind of your original objectives, you don't feel like it's serving you in that way currently?
Well, I remember when we had our first initial conversation, and then Fabio had a quick sort of look at the site and did some data analytics, and actually there was very little traffic. So then, having thought about it, I recognised that actually I'd been able to raise my profile via other sites like LinkedIn, my Insta account, other social media platforms that actually helped me with my business rather than my own website. And even though, you know, people do have a look, you know, where I get my paid work, my consultancy work is via those other sites. It's not actually through the Amp Up Your Voice website. So it's really, really interesting.
For sure, for sure. So what we're going to do first is we're going to actually kind of take a look and scroll through your website, and Fabio is kind of going to comment on what he can initially see, what could maybe already be improved, and then we'll be taking a look at more the technical side of things, so in terms of like loading time, any issues that might come up. So Fabio, if you want to kind of talk me through, guide me where you want me to take you on the website.
Yeah, sounds good. So what we're going to do now is more from a content perspective. Okay, so what is it that the website could be doing better from a content perspective? So straight away looking at it, for example, on the right, there's huge empty bits like above equality and diversity and anti-racism, as well as at the bottom, as well as it's almost like, Johanne, the work that you do is amazing, right? And it's super important for the community and for the world, really. So even the words equality and diversity and anti-racism is almost like he almost feels like it needs to be followed by something else. You know, expert, for example, you know, because straight away then whoever comes into this site, whether it's crawler bots or whether it's actual users, straight away they know precisely what this site is all about. Okay. Then at the bottom of this, I would even have a small little description about the work that you do, or perhaps about yourself, or about Amp Up Your Voice in general. Okay, just because those keywords will certainly help you rank a little bit farther up. Okay. Noemi, let's scroll down a little bit. Now here, this is a very important part. All right. If you stay here. If you may recall from what we were just talking about a second ago when I was going through the off-page SEO, it's all about getting people to link back to your site. Okay, so Johanne, due to the amazing work that she's doing, she's worked with some incredible companies. I mean, straight away looking at it, you see huge banks like HSBC or Starling Bank, huge companies like Zoopla, all right, or even the Black British Network, the Cephas Williams initiative. So certainly getting all these different companies writing about the work that you've done for them, John, and linking your domain within their site towards yours would have huge benefits for you, all right? Because it's actually very hard to get someone like HSBC, for example, to create a link for one of my clients, for example, if they have no connections, all right? However, you've worked with them. All right, so all you'd have to do is ask for that link. Like perhaps say they ever upload your workshop or any of your talks on their site, then just get them to link your domain there, and I guarantee that would have a huge impact on your traffic.
Yeah, because you can kind of, I mean, the information is there, but it's not being used in the right way. So it's really about the value added, and the impact. So even though I've got all the stuff on there and people are like, oh, it's a great site, it's actually not doing its job.
Yeah.
Which is where you guys come in, obviously.
Yeah, that is precisely it. And then a little bit further down, when you're speaking about your services, or exactly what you do, okay?
There's no I in team. I need to change that. I. And all the pictures of myself, I'm like, I'm not really a narcissist. I just didn't really think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go through that because with SEO, it's also very important to have pictures that actually make sense towards like your services, to have them on your site. You know?
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, when it comes to the services that you offer, I would certainly expand these. The one thing that is very important is when it comes to SEO, it's very easy to have a lot of text on your site. Okay. However, the hard part about content SEO is identifying the right keywords to use in every section of the site. All right. So, for example, for for your mentorship services, there would certainly be specific keywords that you would have to use that would actually boost up your rankings. And the same thing for your trainings and your freelance sort of writing services that you offer. You know,
Okay.
so yeah, certainly tackling the right keywords in services like this is certainly is quite helpful. Now, Noemi, let's go to the bar at the top. Yes, so if we go to workshops, for example, so these are free resources that you're essentially showing on your site, right, Johanne?
Sorry, repeat that question.
These resources are essentially sorry, these workshops are essentially the resources and the courses that you have available on your site, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So this is essentially the most important aspect of the website, because this is where you want most of the people to gather themselves in and book courses with you, right? So this page right here is perhaps the most important page of the website. And here is where we certainly need to go into deep detail onto what every single one of these courses is all about. Identifying the right keywords to describe them, identifying the keywords that people search for the most, so keywords with high search volume, explaining precisely what every single course is all about, ensuring that whoever comes onto this page finds precisely what they're looking for, as I was also saying during the presentation. All right. Now, some of these workshops say that one of these workshops was the workshops that you used for HSBC, for the Black British Network, for any of the big companies that you've worked with. These are the sort of pages that you would want them to link you to, because the amount of traffic that they get, it's very easy for any of their users on their site to read about you and then instantly click on one of your workshops, and boom, there you have it. There's a booking. You know, which is why those links are really, really important. Okay, and then Noemi, let's go back up again for a second. I believe there's one more thing. Yes, articles. So now, from an articles perspective, again, if you scroll a little bit farther down, Noemi. Now, Johanne, you write about incredibly important topics. I mean, I know that you and I have already had a discussion about this before, but some of the topics in these articles are extremely important for people to read about. Now, the problem that we're currently having on the site is whenever you click on these links, the articles are actually not sitting on the website. They're sitting on LinkedIn, right?
On Millennial Femme, but or on LinkedIn. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but not online.
Exactly. So one of the most important aspects of SEO from a content perspective is ensuring that your website has a blog. Okay, so having all these articles sitting on our blog page would certainly help us as well, and it's a lot easier for users as well. If they ever want to share that article anywhere on their socials, they can easily share that article and then help you get that traffic also heading towards your site. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So Noemi, let's now look at it from a technical perspective.
There's definitely work to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So from a technical perspective, we conducted a crawl for Johanne's site to see how the site is performing, as I was saying, from a technical perspective, not just from a content perspective. And straight away, the first thing that stood out for me is that page speed. Now, 4,000 milliseconds, you can see it as 4 seconds. For anyone that doesn't know about SEO, it may sound like, wow, 4 seconds, that's extremely fast. Like, I'm looking good. But as you can see in the platform in front of you, is very much sitting in the red numbers. And the reason for that is because Google suggests that websites should be between 0.8 seconds to a second. Okay, that's how quick your site needs to be. Now, straight away, I can see that the site certainly has issues with the hosting server, perhaps, as well as the development of the site. So perhaps there's a lot of plugins that need to be updated. Perhaps there's some plugins that need to be added to the site. So it would be a matter of us going more into a deeper audit to analyze exactly what is it that is making the page speed be as low as it is. All right. Then another very important thing here that you can also see is the pages per level aspect. So when it comes to clicks, pages per level is essentially how many clicks does it take the user to get to a page that they want to read. All right. So in this case, it's telling you that the optimal number is 0 to 3. So 0 to 3 clicks is the optimal number that you should be looking for. So that's all about internal linking. Now, 9% of Johanne's site takes people 4 to 6 clicks to get to them. And then finally, Noemi, just scroll a little bit farther down. You have, I just wanted to quickly show you about the missing meta descriptions. Now, as I was telling you earlier, when it comes to meta descriptions and meta titles, that's what Google uses to find out what's in every page. Now, Johanne's got 18 pages on her site, and out of the 18 pages, all 18 have missing meta descriptions, which means that Google actually has no idea where every single one of those pages is. You know, so that's probably why. So that's what I would suggest we do. So certainly tackle all these technical issues. Tackle the page speed, tackle the internal linking to ensuring that we improve the pages per level. And then once all the technical aspects of things is taken care of, we focus on the content and the sort of UX and structure of the website. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that is it.
Oh, do you ever do you have any stats on the profitability? So like where you've taken companies and sort of percentage wise in terms of how you've increased profits? I think that would be really interesting to our audience to know. Actually, it's worth the investment.
Yeah, so I actually kind of spoke about it from whilst I was using the case studies, but more from a revenue perspective, simply because it's like it would be almost a breach of contract for me to be talking about everyone's contracts, of course.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
But certainly, like the 3 case studies I showed Noemi. If we go back to the case studies, for example, just briefly. Starting from Legion of Vapors. Oh, my laptop is about to die. So Legion of Vapors, this increase in organic traffic, so from 3% on average every month to from 3,000 to 17,000 users every month. They've had an increase of 90% in revenue since they joined us. Okay.
Amazing. Yeah.
If we then go to Fortnite STW items, Noemi, these change of 165 to 3,651 users. They've had an increase in revenue of about, if I remember correctly, 55%.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And then finally with Desres is a little bit harder to quantify because it's more of a service and not a product. However, I can tell you that the impact it's had in their revenue has certainly been positive. I mean, as a matter of fact, Desres is actually our oldest client, so it certainly is someone that that has seen the great benefits of SEO applied to them. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you both so much, and thank you, Johanne, for letting yourself be a bit vulnerable so that we could take a look at your website and kind of see what could be improved. Hopefully it also means that people that have joined the workshop today can maybe relate to the position that you're in. They can maybe also start looking into their own websites to see what fixes they can try and implement, whether they do also need help from an agency or not. I'm not going to go through the bullet points of these key takeaways, as they're quite simple. We've mentioned them before, and I've also mentioned that we will share them with you as well via email in the coming week. I'm aware of time, so I want to take us to the Q&A. So if you still haven't popped a question in the chat or have messaged privately, please feel free to do so now. I have received a question through one of our socials. So I thought I would kind of dive straight in. Please do feel free to keep asking questions in the meantime. Fabio, I'm going to start with you because this question is much more relevant. Is what tools are currently freely available to measure keywords? Are there free tools available?
I mean, yeah, there certainly are free tools. You can even use Keyword Planner, which is a tool offered by Google. The only thing is, when it comes to free tools, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, the only thing is, when it comes to free tools, I would normally say that be wary of the data that you get with them. Okay, because it certainly is quite hard to get real-time data for any SEO tool in the world, which is why the SEO tools I would recommend the most are tools that actually have their own crawlers. Okay, because normally what a lot of these tools do is that they purchase the data from third-party companies, and then the data is normally, it just doesn't marry up with what you may see in real time on Google, which is why I would normally suggest you sort of invest in it and find yourself tools that will actually give you the right data, because otherwise it can be counterproductive to the work that you're trying to do. Okay,
that is definitely good to know. You mentioned earlier in the workshop about PPC, essentially the strategy of paying per click. Obviously, a lot of people kind of put SEO and PPC kind of against each other, and I think it would be quite useful to kind of really highlight the differences, because what we've kind of said is SEO is this more kind of sustainable long-term strategy that might feel like it's an initial kind of bigger investment than maybe your PPC budget, but what does it really mean long-term?
it's a very good question, because I actually made a LinkedIn post about it not too long ago. Look, when it comes to PPC is actually very good for short-term traffic. Okay, so like I normally tell all my clients that if you do want to launch a PPC campaign, just have it hand in hand with your SEO, because at the end of the day, as I was saying, when it comes to PPC, every time someone clicks on your link, you're paying for it. You're paying Google for it. Now, if I remember the stats correctly, I believe last year alone, Google made about $157 billion on PPC alone. Okay. Now, look, I worked at Google, and just to let you in a little secret, PPC is essentially seen almost as the lazy side of everything. So it's very much like, I can't be asked with SEO, it's going to take too long, the results are going to take too long, let me just pay Google for it, let me rank right at the top, look nice and pretty at the top. The only problem is, how many times everyone here in the call have gone to a specific link, clicked on it, browse around, and then you've left? Then that's it. It's already a loss for your company, because you've already paid for that user to be in your site, and that user has spent no money in your site. Okay, which is why SEO is so important, because it's very, very good for you to have to rank right at the very top and not have to pay for anyone clicking on your site and then leaving it. Okay, now the reason why I was saying that it's good for you to have both is because, of course, PPC is still a very good practice. If, for example, you're just launching a product and you want to have some brand awareness, have people coming onto your site, or perhaps is Christmas, even though PPC is super extremely expensive over Christmas and holidays like Black Friday and stuff like that. It's still very good for you to use PPC in instances like that, or a product that you very much want to sell or compete against in the search engines, whilst your SEO is working in the background for you to gain that very first position. So yeah, a balanced approach is normally what I would suggest, but if your budget is limited, I would certainly suggest you go for SEO, because the results will stay there for a very long time. PPC, as soon as you stop paying, that's it, it's gone. Someone else is taking that position.
Yeah, makes all of the sense. I'm very aware of time, but I am going to direct this last question towards Johanne. We've mentioned it a few times, but I think it's worth reiterating. Why do you think it is particularly important for underrepresented groups and founders to be investing in these types of practices to take up space digitally and, let's say, amp up their digital voice?
Yeah, I mean, we've just seen by the stats, even in this tiny workshop, that, Black and ethnically diverse individuals are still facing so many barriers to success. There's a plethora of systemic barriers. And actually, if we can, have this sort of practical takeaway and invest in ourselves, then we'll be able to raise our voices and, really be heard. And you know, we do need to be heard in the business world. And as we said, economics underpins everything. So, you know, it's actually critical that those stats, you know, I want to be looking at these stats next year and the next 5 years and really hoping that we see some improvement. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting. We have an opportunity to really like redefine the boundaries and like change the narratives for ourselves as well. So yeah, and I think it's really just about knowledge as well, gaining that knowledge. So I had no idea about any of this until we had a conversation. So, you know, I think it's that educational piece. It's like educating ourselves, having that knowledge, and then putting it into practice so that we, you know, amp up our own voices, and like get those Google hits.
Amazing. We're going to round it off there, I think, given that we're just 2 minutes over. So I'd like to thank you, well, both Fabio and Johanne, for this great workshop. I'm sure it has been super insightful for our audience. Hopefully they will come away armed with some inspiration for their SEO strategy and some great tips that they can implement. As promised earlier, please find all of our contact details here. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send them over or reach out. We're more than happy to chat. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the workshop today, potentially if you'd be interested in any further insights. So we will be sending around a survey shortly asking for your feedback. We would really appreciate it. It'll only take a few minutes and it kind of allows us to keep improving the content that we share with everyone. And you can also expect to get the on-demand recording next week. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all once again for attending today. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. And that's everything from me.
Sorry, guys, before everyone goes, I quickly wanted to say thank you very much, Noemi. You've been a great host, you know, really good moderator. You've put this workshop together. Great work. And yeah, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you enjoyed them. Please, as Noemi was saying, feel free to send us any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much.